Have you ever truly listened to silence? Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of an entire land? A heavy silence, woven from a million golden sunsets over cornfields that stretch to the horizon. Try to imagine it. Take a deep breath. Can you smell the damp earth after a rain? The scent of life, of peace? That is Iowa. In the minds of millions, it is the beating heart of America. A steady, strong, and tranquil rhythm. But there are many kinds of silence. And the silence of Iowa is a different kind. It conceals. It swallows screams. It covers nameless tombstones and blood-soaked memories with a layer of dust. Have you ever asked yourself, what lies behind that facade of perfect simplicity? Do you believe that the quietest places are sometimes home to the most violent nightmares? Tonight, we will tear through that veil of silence. We will be your guides, leading you deep into the darkest corners of this land. We will not speak of harvest festivals or tranquil afternoons. Instead, we will tell you of a camping trip that turned into a massacre, where the fateful gunshots still echo in the woods of Gitchie, Manitou. We will open the doors of Edinburgh Manor, a place that was once a home, a sanctuary, now a prison for tormented souls, and a cunning entity that awaits visitors. Together, we will confront the curse of a black angel, a statue born from ultimate sorrow that now brings death to any who dare challenge it. You will hear the sound of a basketball bouncing in the night in an abandoned school where dead children still play. And finally, we will drive down a lonely road where the mournful cries of a mother who lost her child still haunt the darkness. This is not a movie. These are not fabricated tales. This is history. This is real pain. And most importantly, you will not just hear about them from an outsider. No, we will take you deeper than that. You will hear the story through the very ears of those who were there. You will feel their hearts hammering in their chests. You will feel the cold breath of fear on the back of their necks. You will have to ask yourself the same question they were forced to confront. What must I do to survive? Prepare yourselves. Our journey begins here, beside a warm campfire under a sky full of stars, with 5 young friends, with laughter and dreams, just before everything was plunged into hell. This is the story of Sandra Chesky.
Have you ever heard a sound that could split your life in two? A sound so sharp it severs reality, creating a permanent line between a before and an after? For me, that was the first gunshot. It wasn't like the movies, not at all. There was no drama, no build-up. It was a dry, naked explosion, a brutal violation of the night's quiet. One moment, the air was filled with laughter and the pine scent of the campfire. The next, all that remained was the acrid smell of gunpowder and a dead silence that was even more terrifying than the blast. I saw Roger. He was looking at me, a smile still on his lips. Then a small red dot appeared on his shirt. He didn't scream. He didn't say a word. Just a look of surprise, of utter confusion in his eyes as the fire danced in them one last time. And then, he fell. Just like a puppet whose strings had been cut. My brain wouldn't accept it. It couldn't. Everything around me seemed to slow down, to blur. The screams of the others sounded like they were coming from another world. What do you do when you witness the impossible? When logic collapses and everything you know about the world turns to ash in a single second, you do nothing. You just sit there, a 13-year-old girl, and you watch your world being slaughtered. Isn't it strange? The way the mind clings to those moments of peace, as if they were talismans against the darkness. Just a few hours before that horrific moment, that night was one of the most beautiful of my life. Do you remember that feeling? The feeling of being young, when a simple camping trip could feel like an entire adventure. We'd driven from Sioux Falls, crossing the state line to Gitchie, Manitou. The name sounded magical. and the place was too. A wild, ancient preserve where you could feel like you were the only people on Earth. We found a perfect clearing and built a campfire. The flames danced, chasing away the November chill and painting fantastic shadows on the old quartzite rock formations. I was only 13, the youngest of the group, and I felt so cool. Hanging out with Roger, my 17-year-old boyfriend, he was perfect. He had that kind of hair that was always perfectly messy, and a smile that could make a bad day bright. He put his arm around my shoulder, and I felt a sense of absolute safety, a feeling that nothing bad could ever touch me. Have you ever felt that safe? So safe that you forget the world outside of that embrace even exists. We talked about nothing important. About school, about songs we loved, about cars we dreamed of. Stuart and Dana, the two brothers, were constantly teasing each other, and Michael just sat there with his quiet, gentle laugh. My worries back then were so small, so innocent. Did Roger really like me? Should I say something smart? I had no idea that in just a few hours, those questions would become painfully meaningless. We were there, 5 young souls under a sky full of stars, believing our futures were just as bright and endless. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. The change came slowly, and then all at once. It began with a single sound. A sharp crack of a dry twig being stepped on, echoing from the darkness at the edge of the woods. Instantly, all conversation stopped. All 5 of us turned toward the sound. You know how it is in the woods at night. Every sound is magnified. But this was different. It didn't sound like the footstep of a deer or a raccoon. It had weight. It had purpose. Probably just an animal, Roger said, but there was a slight hesitation in his voice I'd never heard before. He squeezed my shoulder a little tighter. It was meant to be reassuring, but to me, it felt like a confirmation that something was wrong. And then we heard the footsteps. A rustling in the dry leaves. Slow, steady, coming closer. Have you ever met someone and instantly, without a single word, you just knew they were a danger? It's a primal feeling, an alarm bell that rings deep in your soul. That's exactly what I felt when 3 figures stepped out of the darkness and into the ring of firelight. They didn't look like campers. Their clothes were ragged, old. Their faces were gaunt in the flickering light. But the most terrifying thing was their eyes. Empty, cold, devoid of any warmth, any humanity. They looked at us, not like people look at each other. They looked at us the way a predator looks at its prey. The one in the lead, the oldest looking one, gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good evening," he said, his voice raspy. "Having a good time?" It should have been a normal greeting, but the way he said it, it sounded like a threat. Our peace had been shattered. A crack had appeared in our perfect night, and I had a feeling that something truly terrible was about to crawl out of it. What do you do when your survival instinct is screaming run, but your body has turned to stone? That's where we were. Trapped between politeness and primal fear. The leader asked if we had anything fun. Slang for marijuana. Roger, still trying to be calm, answered firmly, "No, we don't." But the answer didn't seem to matter. Their eyes never left us, especially me. I could feel their gaze like filthy insects crawling on my skin. I shrank closer to Roger, trying to make myself invisible. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick. Every second felt like an hour. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. Why weren't they leaving? What did they want? And then, the leader reached inside his old hunting jacket. Time seemed to stop. The firelight glinted off something cold and metallic. A handgun. My heart dropped into my stomach. My world, the world of childish worries, had just officially ended. "I'll ask you again," the man growled, pointing the gun at Roger. "Where's your stash?" Everything escalated so fast. Stuart, in a desperate, brave act to protect his younger brother, stood up. "Look, mister," he said, his voice shaking. "We don't want any trouble. It was a mistake." The third man, the one who had been silent, moved with terrifying speed. He swung the butt of his rifle. A sickening, dull thud echoed as it connected with Stuart's head. He collapsed like a felled tree. Dana's scream tore through the night. That was the moment any fragile hope that this was a misunderstanding, that they would leave, vanished. This wasn't a robbery. This was an assault. We were no longer kids on a camping trip. We were prey, cornered and trapped. Can you imagine that helplessness? The moment you realize there is no escape, and that the monsters from fairy tales, they're real. And then, the first shot, for Roger. And hell opened up. My brain just shut down. It couldn't process the brutality, the randomness of it all. Michael screamed. And then another blast. He went silent. Stuart, still dazed on the ground, tried to push himself up. Another blast. Dana cried out his brother's name. And then there was only silence. One after another. Fast. Merciless. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I did nothing. I just curled myself into a ball, buried my face in my knees, and hoped. I don't know what I was hoping for. That they wouldn't see me. That a bullet would end it quickly. When death is staring you in the face, do you ever wonder how you'd react? Would you fight? Would you flee? Or would you simply surrender to the inevitable? I surrendered. I heard them laughing. Laughing. As if it were a game. Then silence returned, broken by the sound of their footsteps in the leaves. A rough hand grabbed my hair and yanked me out of my numb state. I opened my eyes and looked straight into the face of a demon. He dragged me through the woods, away from the firelight, away from the bodies of my friends. I didn't resist. I said nothing. A part of me had already died by that fire. What was left was just an empty shell, a doll being dragged through the dark. He took me somewhere else, somewhere cold and dark, and there, he stole the rest of my innocence. In that horrific moment, as my mind tried to escape my body, a single, cold, clear thought flashed. A survival instinct rose from the ashes. Pretend. Pretend you're unconscious. Pretend you're dead. It was my only chance. And I clung to it like it was the only thing left in the world. They left me, thinking I was just another body. How long I lay there, I don't know. Minutes, an eternity. In the dark, I listened. I listened for the sound of their trucks starting. Driving away until there was nothing left but the wind and my own heartbeat. I was alive. But why? That question echoed in my head as I forced myself up. My body ached, my soul was shattered. But I got up, and I ran. I ran with no destination, just away from that place, away from the nightmare. Branches clawed at my skin, rocks cut my feet, but I felt no pain. The physical pain was nothing compared to what I had seen. Finally, I saw a light. A farmhouse, salvation. But do you know what hurts even more than living through a nightmare? It's having to tell it, and having no one believe you? At the police station, they looked at me. A 13-year-old girl, clothes torn, covered in bruises, talking nonsense, telling a story too horrific to be true. I saw the doubt in their eyes. How do you describe pure evil to people who have never seen it? How do you convince the world that monsters are real, when you were just a child and the only proof you have are the scars carved deep into your soul? That night, I didn't just lose my friends. I didn't just lose my innocence. I lost my childhood. I walked out of those woods, but a part of me will forever be trapped there, next to a dead campfire, under a starless sky. I survived, but I would never truly be alive again. I became the Gitchie girl, and that was my sentence.
Sandra Chesky's courage was a flickering flame in an endless dark night. She faced demons of flesh and blood, the kind that law can condemn, that prisons can hold. The horror she experienced, though unimaginably brutal, still exists within the realm of human understanding. It is an evil we can name, an evil we can see. But ask yourself this: what happens when evil has no form? When the monster isn't a stranger in the woods, but the very walls that surround you? What happens when the horror isn't an event, but a place? There are places in this world that have witnessed so much suffering, so much despair, that they are no longer inanimate structures. They begin to breathe, they watch, they remember. Every cry, every curse, every lonely death seeps deep into the bricks and the wood until the building itself becomes a living entity. An entity that bears the scars of 100 souls. We now go to such a place, Edinburgh Manor in Scotch Grove, Iowa. From the outside, it's just an old red brick building, but its history is an indictment of misery. A poor farm, an asylum, a home for the elderly. More than 80 lives ended behind those walls, and their spirits, along with something much darker, are said to remain. The following story is told through the audio logs of Alex, a paranormal investigator. He came here with equipment, with methodology, with reason, to search for proof of the other side. But Edinburgh Manor does not care for reason, and it was waiting for him. Listen closely. Can you hear it welcoming us?
Investigation log. Edinburgh Manor, Night 2, 2:13 a.m. Basement. The subject. The subject has just engaged in a Class 1 hostile action. I repeat, Class 1. It spoke a direct vocalization through the ovulus. 2 words. Just 2 words. Get out. Its voice, dear God, it wasn't human. It was a growl, like it came from the earth itself. The second it spoke, I felt a searing pain, like 3 hot knives being dragged down my back. Mark just got the flashlight on it. Oh my God. There are 3 scratches. They're deep, already beating with blood. Right through my t-shirt and my jacket. Have you ever felt a pain that wasn't just physical? A pain that carried a message, a warning filled with pure hatred. We are not alone down here, and it doesn't just want us to leave. It wants to hurt us. When we, the Spectre Seekers team, first pulled up to Edinburgh Manor, I knew this trip wouldn't be a waste. The 2-story red brick building stood there, brooding under the late afternoon sun, like an old giant guarding its secrets. The history of a location is the blueprint for its haunting, and Edinburgh's history is a perfect blueprint. Think about it. It began as a poor farm in the 1850s. Can you imagine the despair, the sickness, the sadness in a place like that? Then it became an asylum and a nursing home, a place people came to die. More than 80 people are said to be buried in an unmarked cemetery on the property. Do you believe a building can absorb emotion? That its walls can soak up decades of suffering and despair, like a sponge? I do. This place isn't just bricks and mortar. It's an archive of human sorrow. There are 3 of us on the team. Sarah is our audio specialist, a true EVP hunter. Mark handles visuals with IR and thermal cameras that see what the naked eye cannot. And I'm the contact specialist, the one who tries to start a conversation with the darkness. We spent the afternoon setting up. Cameras were placed in reported hotspots. The second-floor room said to belong to the spirit of a little girl named Susie. The long hallway where shadow figures are often seen, and of course, the basement, the domain of an aggressive entity they call the Joker. At the time, the air in the house was heavy, a thick silence, but it was a silence we were used to. It wasn't emptiness. It was anticipation. It felt as if the entire building were holding its breath, watching us with 100 unseen eyes. It was the false calm before the night fell and the real performance began. The first activity, as it often does, began subtly. It was around 9 p.m. We were at our base camp in the first-floor living room, monitoring the screens, when a loud slam. It echoed through the entire house. "Mark, check the second-floor hall cam," I said into my walkie. "On it," he replied. Whoa, the door to Susie's room. It just slammed shut. We had checked thoroughly. There were no drafts. All the windows were sealed. A heavy, solid oak door does not slam itself with that kind of force. That was the first crack, an unexplainable anomaly. About an hour later, Sarah decided to conduct her first EVP, electronic voice phenomenon session, in the second-floor hallway, right outside that room. She sat down, turned on her digital recorder, and asked into the space, "Hello, is anyone here? If there's a little girl here, is your name Susie?" At the time, we heard nothing. Total silence. But when she came back and we plugged in the headphones, amplifying the audio, we heard it. Right after her question, a tiny sound, barely a whisper of air, was captured. A giggle, unmistakably, a child's giggle. What's more unsettling, a loud, terrifying bang, or the soft, faint giggle of a child in a place where no child has lived for decades. That laugh was both endearing and profoundly wrong. The building was no longer silent. It had started to talk to us. As the night wore on, the energy in the building began to shift. It got heavier. It felt bolder. Susie's giggle was an invitation, but we started to feel something else waking up. Something not nearly as friendly. We decided it was time to face the elephant in the room, or rather, the demon in the basement. The basement at Edinburgh has the worst reputation. It's the alleged domain of the Joker. No one knows who he was in life, only that he is a spirit full of hate. The moment I opened the door to the cellar stairs, a wave of intense cold washed over us. It wasn't the damp chill of a basement. It was a dry, hostile cold. Have you ever walked into a room where the very air seemed to hate you? Not just cold, but actively hostile, as if the very space you occupy wants you gone. That's what it felt like down there. I went first, turning on the spirit box. This device rapidly scans radio frequencies, creating a chaotic white noise that spirits can supposedly use to form words. Is there anyone down here with us? I asked, into the dark. We come in peace. Through the static, fragmented words began to emerge. ... cold ... tot bane ... padded ... room ... Sarah and I looked at each other. The padded room was the insulated cell at the far end of the basement, where they used to lock up the most violent patients. It's also where the Joker is said to have taken his own life. Suddenly, a small rubber ball Weedy placed in the corner, an object often used to invite interaction from child spirits, shot past my head and slammed into the far wall. It didn't roll. It was thrown with incredible force. Okay, these weren't small cracks anymore. The building was fighting back. My professional curiosity was beginning to be overpowered by a much more basic feeling, the feeling of being prey. I made a fatal mistake. A mistake every investigator is warned never to make. I provoked it. My arrogance, the evidence hunter in me, won out over my caution. I walked toward the ball and said loudly into the darkness, "Is that all you've got? Is that the best you can do?" That's pathetic. You could feel the change instantly. The air became thick, almost hard to breathe. The cold became an icy burn. The silence that followed my taunt was so heavy it was nearly deafening. And then the spirit box in my hand roared. It wasn't fragmented words anymore. A single, powerful, hateful voice commandeered the device. A voice that could not have been human. Get ... out. It screamed the words, dragging out each syllable. The sound seemed to shake the very foundation of the cellar. At the same moment, Mark's voice yelled over the walkie from upstairs. "Alex, Sarah, get out of there now." All the cameras in the basement just died at once. The monitors are completely black. When your science and your reason fail you, when all your equipment is useless, what do you have left? What do you do when the ghost you are hunting starts hunting you? I didn't have time to answer Mark. The second that voice roared, I felt it. 3 searing, razor-sharp lines tore down my back. The pain made me cry out and stumble forward. Sarah grabbed my arm, her face white as a sheet. Go, Alex, go. We didn't need to be told twice. We turned and scrambled up the stairs, not daring to look back. It felt like something was right on our heels, its cold breath on our necks. We weren't investigators anymore. We were trespassers, running for our lives. We didn't stay. We packed our gear hastily and carelessly, throwing everything into cases in silence. Every creak of the floorboards, every whistle of wind through a window frame made us flinch. The building seemed to be laughing at our fear. Outside on the porch, under the dim light, I took off my jacket. Mark shone his flashlight on my back. 3 parallel scratches, swollen and red. They were there, undeniable, physical proof. A signature from the demon in the basement. On the silent drive home, I didn't feel victorious. We had incredible evidence. Susie's giggle, the demonic voice, and the scars on my back. But at what cost? I didn't feel like a scientist who had made a new discovery. I felt like a child who had poked a venomous snake with a stick and was lucky to get away. That experience changed me. It shattered the safe wall of professional skepticism. Before, I was looking for trapped residual spirits. Now I know there are other things out there. Things that were never human or have long forgotten they were. Things that are pure hate. How do you go back to a normal life after you've been shown with absolute certainty that the dark is not empty? How do you ever sleep soundly again when you know some doors should never, ever be opened? We went to Edinburgh Manor to find ghosts, but we found something so much worse. God. And I have a feeling that a piece of it followed us home.
Alex survived. He escaped Edinburgh Manor, carrying scars on his back and a new kind of fear in his soul. His story is a cold reminder. There are rules in the world of shadows, and trespassers, no matter their intent, will face the consequences. Alex confronted an entity that was already there, an evil inherent to a place. But what happens when the evil isn't something you stumble upon, but something you actively seek out? We often hear of urban legends, of curses whispered in schoolyards, and ghost stories told around campfires. They are a spice of life, a way to test our courage, a harmless game. But have you ever wondered where these curses truly come from? Most are born from a real tragedy, from a pain, a loss, or a rage so immense that it lingers, attaching itself to an object, turning it from an inanimate thing into a conduit for misery. So, what is more dangerous? An evil that finds you, or an evil that you invite into your life? A horror you are forced to confront, or a curse that you challenge out of curiosity, out of the arrogance of youth? Our next story explores that very question. We travel to the Oakland Cemetery in Iowa City, where a bronze angel statue stands nearly 9 feet tall. It was forged from a mother's love for her lost son, but over time, it has turned a frightening jet black. They say it is cursed, and that curse is waiting for those foolish enough to test it. Now, listen to the story of Chloe, a 17-year-old high school student. She didn't believe in curses, but one night, she decided to find out the truth for herself.
Cold. Unbelievably cold. That was the first thing I felt. Not the cold of metal on an autumn night. This was a dead cold. An internal cold. Like someone had just injected ice directly into my veins. My lips were still pressed against the statue's jet black bronze surface, and I could feel my own life, my own warmth, being siphoned away, bit by bit. Have you ever done something on a dare, and in that split second, between the action and the consequence, you felt a wave of absolute regret, the kind that freezes the blood in your veins? A flash of brilliant white light exploded behind my closed eyelids, and a sharp crack echoed just above my head. Lightning, but the sky was clear. I heard my friends scream. I tried to pull back, but my body wouldn't obey. I felt myself falling, but I couldn't feel the ground. My world was nothing but that bone-deep chill, the darkness, and a single thought repeating like a death sentence. What have I done? Oh God, what have I done? It started, as most stupid teenage decisions do, with boredom. A Friday night in Iowa. Can you imagine? Our choices were see a movie we'd already seen 3 times, or hang out in the Walmart parking lot. Thrilling stuff. There were 4 of us, crammed into Liam's beat-up sedan. Liam was the kind of guy who always had to prove something. Maya was the opposite, scared of everything. And then there was Ben, who usually just went along with the crowd. And me? I was the realist. I didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or anything that couldn't be explained by science. Hey, Liam said suddenly, killing the radio. Let's go to Oakland Cemetery. Maya groaned from the back seat. Why? That's so creepy. To see the Black Angel, Liam said, a smug grin spreading across his face. I heard that if a girl kisses it, she dies instantly. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You'd do it, wouldn't you, Chloe? I rolled my eyes. That's so lame. It's just an oxidized statue, Liam. A story people made up to scare wimps like Maya. Do you remember what it was like to be a teenager? That feeling of invincibility, like you were the main character in a movie, and nothing truly bad could ever happen to you. Death was a distant concept, something that happened to other people, on the news. That night, I felt exactly like that, immortal. Curses were a joke, and I, in my 17-year-old arrogance, decided I would be the one to prove it. After all, what's the worst that could happen? Oakland Cemetery was different at night. The silence here wasn't like the silence in town. It was heavier, older. The faint light from distant street lamps only made the shadows of the tombstones seem longer, more grotesque. It's over there, Ben whispered, pointing toward a hulking silhouette in the center of a clearing. As we got closer, I had to admit it was genuinely creepy. The statue wasn't just black. It was a deep, absolute black. A black that seemed to drink the very light around it. It was tall, imposing, with its wings spread wide as if about to launch into the night sky. The angel's face wasn't peaceful. It was blank, but its eyes seemed to gaze down at us with an endless, profound sorrow. Have you ever stood before a piece of art, a painting, an old building, a statue, and felt like it was looking back at you? Not with eyes, but with a presence, an ancient awareness. God, it's freezing. Maya shivered, hugging herself tightly. She was right. The air around the statue was significantly colder. It was like stepping into an air-conditioned room. I told myself it was just its location. Maybe the wind funneled through here. But deep down, my skepticism was beginning to waver. There was something about this place. An energy. A sadness so thick you could almost touch it. For the first time that night, I felt a tiny prickle of fear. The statue wasn't just bronze and stone. It felt alive. So Chloe, Liam's voice cut through my thoughts. Still think it's just an oxidized statue. The challenge in his voice snapped me back to reality. I saw his smug grin, Ben's expectant gaze, and the utter terror on Maya's face. I was cornered. You know what a teenager's greatest fear is? It isn't ghosts or death. It's shame. It's being seen as a coward. In that moment, my vague fear of the statue was nothing compared to the very real fear of backing down in front of Liam. "Don't do it, Chloe, please," Maya pleaded, her voice on the verge of tears. "Let's just go home." Her plea only made it worse. Now, if I backed down, I wasn't just a coward. I was the one who made Maya worry for nothing. My pride was now locked in a standoff with a ridiculous curse. "Give me the flashlight," I said to Ben, trying to keep my voice steady. I walked toward the statue. Each step felt heavy, like I was wading through water. The air grew colder and colder. The strangest part was when I was only a few feet away, all sound seemed to vanish. No more wind, no more insects, just a thick, suffocating silence. It was like we were in a bubble, separated from the rest of the world. I could feel my friend's eyes on my back. What's stronger, your fear of the unknown or your fear of looking like a coward in front of your friends? How far would you go to protect your pride? I stood there, heart pounding, and I knew I was about to find out the answer. I stood before it, the black angel. It was even taller up close. I could see tiny cracks in the metal surface, like wrinkles on an ancient face. I raised my hand and my fingers trembled as they brushed against its cold arm. Cold. It burned. It was so cold. "Do it!" Liam yelled from behind me. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't want to look at that blank face anymore. I took a deep breath, the smell of old metal and damp moss filling my lungs. And then I leaned forward. The moment my lips touched the cold metal, two things happened at once. First, the feeling, it wasn't just cold. It was like a sub-zero electric shock, a feeling of absolute emptiness, as if all the warmth, all the energy, all the life in me was being drawn into the statue through that tiny point of contact. It wasn't a kiss, it was a violation. I felt like the statue was kissing me back, but with the mouth of the grave. Second, the sound and the light, a deafening crack, exploded right over my head, and a brilliant white light flashed behind my tightly shut eyelids. The lightning. If you could pinpoint the single worst decision of your entire life, the exact moment you knew you had crossed a line you could never uncross, what would it feel like? Would it be a loud bang or a cold, silent certainty? For me, it was both. I recoiled, gasping, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I staggered back, my limbs weak. I opened my eyes just in time to see the horrified faces of my friends before my knees gave out. I didn't die, but in that instant, I knew with absolute certainty that a part of me had. Liam and Ben pulled me to my feet. It was just static, Liam stammered, trying to rationalize the lightning. Dry lightning, a weather thing. No one believed him, not even himself. The ride home was consumed by a heavy silence. No one dared to look at me. I just sat there, staring out the window, but I didn't see the passing scenery. I just saw that flash of white light and felt that icy cold on my lips. The legend said I would die instantly. That didn't happen. For the first few days, I almost convinced myself that Liam was right, that it was just a bizarre coincidence, a trick of nature. But then the nightmares started. Every night, I dreamt I was trapped in darkness, with a huge winged shape standing over me, its empty eyes staring into me. I started seeing shadows in the corners of my eyes when I was alone. I constantly felt like I was being watched. That icy cold would sometimes return, a sudden chill that shot up my spine, even on a hot summer day. The curse didn't kill me. It did something worse. It attached itself to me. What is a curse? Is it death? Or is it being forced to live every single day with the cold touch of the grave on your shoulder, just waiting? Which fate is worse? I didn't die that night in Oakland Cemetery, but the confident, careless girl named Chloe. She died. Someone else took her place. Someone who always checks the shadows behind her. Someone who is terrified of thunderstorms. And someone who will never, ever forget the kiss of the Black Angel.
Youth. A dangerous combination of a sense of invincibility and a sense of boredom. Chloe sought out the curse, not because she believed in it, but precisely because she didn't. She used her skepticism as a shield, only to discover, to her horror, that some truths do not require our belief in order to exist. Her haunting is a costly lesson in respect for the tragedies that create such stories. We have seen the evil of man. We have seen a building turned into a prison for souls. We have seen a curse forged in bronze. All of these are powerful, concentrated horrors. But there is another kind of haunting, a more subtle one. It is not a single scream, but 1,000 overlapping whispers. What is more haunting? A single, powerful curse, or the faint echoes of 1,000 forgotten childhoods? Think of an old school. Do you believe that places of learning hold more energy than others? All the hope, fear, joy, and boredom of generations of students, all compressed within a few hallways and classrooms. When the final bell rings for the last time and the school is abandoned, where does all of that emotion go? Our next story takes us to Farrar, Iowa, to a school built in 1921 and shuttered in silence since 2001. It sits directly across the street from a cemetery, as if staring into its own final resting place. This place doesn't have a single curse, but a symphony of spirits. And to hear that symphony, you need a patient listener. Our narrator this time is Mark, a veteran paranormal investigator. He doesn't come to provoke. He comes to listen. But he is about to discover that, within the choir of childish spirits, there is a deep, angry baritone of someone who is still trying to maintain discipline.
Investigation log. Farrar School. 23 to 47 hours. I'm in the gymnasium. All equipment is silent. No EMF spikes, no temperature fluctuations. I am standing alone in the center of the room. Completely alone. And it's happening. Have you ever been in a place so silent you could hear the blood pumping in your own ears? Now imagine, in that perfect silence you hear a sound that simply cannot be there. A sound that breaks the laws of reality. What does your mind do with that information? It started in the corner of the room, an old basketball. It just bounced, by itself, once, then again, steady, rhythmic, as if an invisible child is playing in the dark. I see no one. The thermal camera is picking up nothing, but I can hear it. My God, I can hear it so clearly. I am not alone in here. Class, it seems, is not dismissed. Unlike many of my colleagues, I don't hunt ghosts. I consider myself a chronicler of echoes. I document the stories that remain in the walls. And Farrar School, from the moment I set foot inside, felt like a vast library of those echoes. I came here alone. I always prefer to work alone. It helps me to attune to the atmosphere of a location, to feel it without distraction. The two-story brick building stood there, silent under the moonlight, not radiating the kind of menace you'd get from an asylum. Instead, it radiated a kind of melancholy, the smell of old chalk dust, decaying wood, and forgotten memories. The unique thing about Farrar is its location. Directly across the road is a cemetery. The playground fence nearly touches the headstones. In my field, we have a theory about places like this. We call them batteries. The cemetery provides the energy, a static source from the departed, and the school, with all the potent emotions of youth, acts as an amplifier. Do you think that places of learning hold more energy than others? All the hope, fear, joy, and boredom of generations of children, all packed into a few hallways. When the final bell rings for the last time, where does all that emotion go? At Farrar, I had the feeling it went nowhere at all. I began my work methodically, setting up stationary IR cameras, audio recorders in each classroom, and an EMF sensor in the main hall. I didn't come here to provoke or demand that the spirits prove themselves. My method is to be silent, to listen, and to wait for the walls to begin their story. My wait didn't last long. While I was on the second floor, setting up a camera in an old classroom, the door to a storage closet at the back of the room, which had been firmly shut, slowly creaked open. Just a few inches. There was no draft. The hinges were so rusted it would have taken a considerable force to move it. I documented it, both on camera and with a voice note. First kinetic activity. Closet door opened on its own. Later, I sat in the main hallway conducting an EVP session. I didn't ask sensational questions like, "Did anyone die here?" I asked simpler ones. "Does anyone want to tell a story? What was your name?" In the silence that followed, I heard nothing. But when I put on my headphones and played back the tape, amplifying it, I heard them. In between the static, a tiny, faint whisper. It sounded like, "Play." And then a sound like someone humming a nursery rhyme. If you could speak to a ghost, what would you ask? Would you ask about their death or about their life? What if it was the ghost of a child who just wanted to play? I felt a profound sadness. These weren't demons. These were children, or at least the energetic imprints of them, stuck in a loop, repeating familiar actions. But as I was reviewing the hallway footage, I saw it. For a single frame, a small, child-sized shadow darted past a doorway at the far end of the hall. The first crack had appeared. The school was beginning to show me its secrets, and I felt welcomed. At the time, I still felt that way. That feeling of welcome didn't last. When I moved my investigation to the office area on the first floor, the atmosphere changed abruptly. The melancholy sadness of the classrooms was replaced by a heavy, oppressive feeling. My thermometer, which had been reading a steady 15 degrees Celsius, suddenly dropped to 8 degrees as I crossed the threshold into the principal's office. A sudden temperature drop like that is a classic sign, but it was the feeling that came with it that was disturbing. It was like stepping into a permanent winter. We all remember the feeling of being sent to the principal's office, right? That anxiety, that fear of punishment. Now imagine that feeling. But the principal has been dead for 50 years, and he is the one who is truly in charge of this place. Where would you run? I placed a recorder on the old wooden desk and asked, "Are there any teachers or principals here? We only want to know the story of this school." The answer I received wasn't a voice. As I was standing in the corner of the room, an old, thick registration book sitting on a bookshelf was suddenly shoved off and fell with a heavy thud to the floor. It didn't slide off. It was pushed. I was beginning to feel less like a chronicler and more like a misbehaving student being watched. The energy here was not childlike. It was disciplinary, severe, and angry. I felt like I had trespassed into a private domain, and its warden was not pleased. My investigation had just shifted from listening to whispers to confronting an unseen authority. My patience was wearing thin. My respect was starting to give way to a need to know. I switched on the spirit box. "Were you the principal of this school?" I asked directly into the cold air of the office. "Were the children afraid of you?" That was a mistake. The box scanned through the frequencies, and then a growling, distorted voice full of authority and malice screamed through the speaker, "Silence!" That sound wasn't just a voice, it was a command, filled with energy. It made the hairs on my arms stand straight up. I backed away, stumbling over a chair. I hurried out of the office and back into the hallway. And that's when it happened. The heavy oak door to the principal's office, the one I had to put my shoulder into just to open earlier, slammed shut behind me with horrific force. The slam was like a gunshot, echoing through the empty halls. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was an act of violence. I stood there, heart racing, staring at the vibrating door. And then, at the far end of the long, dark hallway, I saw it. Not a small shadow darting by. A tall, hulking, pitch-black human silhouette, standing perfectly still. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. What's more terrifying? A ghost that throws things, or a ghost that simply stands there, watching you from the end of a long, dark hall, letting you know that you are powerless and that this is its domain? In that moment, I was no longer an investigator. I was a trespasser. My academic curiosity vanished, replaced by a single instinct. Run. Run from this place. Run from that man in the shadows. I don't remember packing my equipment. It's all a blur of adrenaline and controlled panic. I just knew I had to get out. As I drove away from the Farrar school grounds, I didn't dare look in my rearview mirror. I had the irrational feeling that the tall man would be standing at the gate, waving me goodbye. On the drive home, I pulled over to the side of the road, trying to get my heart rate back to normal. I plugged my headphones into my recorder and listened to that horrifying moment again. The growled word, silence, was even clearer and more menacing than I remembered. It wasn't a product of radio interference. It was an intentional voice, the voice of a warden. I had gone to Farrar to listen to the echoes of children, and I found them. But I also found their jailer. This school isn't just haunted, it has a twisted spiritual ecosystem. The playful child spirits are trapped under the rule of a domineering, angry entity. They aren't just playing, they are in a permanent, unending detention. After confronting true darkness, what do you do next? Do you try to forget, or do you carry the burden of the warning? And what about the innocent souls left behind, still trapped in that eternal detention? I don't have the answers. I only know that Farrar School is not a playground, it's a prison, and the principal is still walking the halls.
Mark arrived as a historian and left as a messenger. He found the evidence he was looking for, but also discovered a much more frightening truth: that some places are not just haunted, they are occupied. The spiritual ecosystem of Farrar School is a reminder that the other side has its own rules, its own predators, and its own prey, just like our world. We have traveled through four corners of fear in Iowa, from the evil of man to the imprisonment of souls, from a materialized curse to a ghostly system of order. Now we come to our final story, a story that is perhaps the most familiar to us all. Every small town has one: a lonely road, a haunted bridge, a legend of a tragic spirit. These stories are both a warning and an invitation. They warn us of past tragedies, but they also invite our curiosity. They challenge our courage. So, where is the line? Where is the line between a ghost story and a genuine encounter? And what is the price for crossing it? Our final story comes from Burlington, on a road officially named Stony Hollow, but known to locals as Rainbow Road. It is the home of the legend of Lucinda, a mother who tragically lost her child and has lingered for generations. It's considered a rite of passage for the local youth. Drive to the old bridge, turn off your lights, and call her name. Our narrator, Jake, a 19-year-old young man, decided to perform that ritual. He went there with a car, a girlfriend, and a dangerous, thrilling sense of youthful abandon. He thought it was a game. He was wrong.
Please, 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 ... I muttered, turning the key again. Another click. Nothing. The engine was dead. The lights were out. We were trapped. Have you ever been so scared that you couldn't even scream? When your throat closes up and the only sound you can make is a pathetic little gasp. That's the moment you know it's real. The game is over. Outside the passenger window, where Sarah was huddled, it was there, a shimmering white figure. It had no legs, just hovering above the ground. I couldn't make out a face, just a dark oval shadow where a face should be, but I could feel it looking in. Staring at Sarah, I could hear the sound of Sarah's nails digging into the upholstery. And then, the figure slowly bent down, pressing its formless face against the glass. A cold fog spread out from the point of contact. The game was over, and we were about to lose. Every small town has a story like that, right? A haunted bridge, a lover's leap, a ghost light. A place you go as a teenager to feel a cheap thrill and prove how brave you are. In Burlington, that place was Stony Hollow Road, aka Rainbow Road. It was a perfect Saturday night. Me and Sarah, my girlfriend, were just driving around aimlessly, like you do. We had the music up, the windows down, and it felt like we owned the world. You know, I said, trying to sound mysterious, there's a place near here that's supposed to be haunted. Sarah rolled her eyes, but I could see she was smiling. Here we go with your ghost stories, Jake. No, this one's real, I lied. The legend of Lucinda. They say she lost her kid off the cliffs on this road, then jumped herself. Her spirit still wanders there, looking for her child, or for whoever wronged her. I paused for dramatic effect, and there's a way to summon her. Sarah laughed. Seriously, I said, my voice grave. I'll show you. Back then, to me it was just a story, a piece of local folklore, a way to impress my girlfriend, to create a little adventure on a boring night. I didn't actually believe it. I just liked the thrill of telling the story, of seeing that mix of fear and excitement in Sarah's eyes. Did you ever stop to think that one of those stories might actually be true? I hadn't. To me it was just a game. A game I was about to play very foolishly. The second I turned onto Stony Hollow Road, the feeling changed. The trees on either side were overgrown, forming a canopy that blocked out the moon and plunged the road into near total darkness. The headlights of my old car only cut a short path ahead. The colorful graffiti on the rock faces, the stuff that gave the road its rainbow nickname, looked bizarre and out of place in the dark. This place is creepy, Sarah whispered, rolling up her window. It's just a road, I said, but even I was starting to feel a knot of unease. And then, the weird stuff started happening. First, the radio. It started crackling, then began scanning through stations on its own, landing on nothing but white noise. I shut it off in annoyance. Stupid radio. Then, my headlights flickered once, then came back on. Must be the wiring, I muttered, giving the dashboard a little pat. It's funny how your brain tries to find a logical reason for everything, isn't it? Bad reception, faulty wiring, a drop in temperature. How many coincidences does it take before you're forced to admit that something else is going on? As we rounded a bend, we both felt it. A sudden, intense cold flooded the car, even though the windows were shut. So cold I could see my own breath. A few seconds later, it was gone. I glanced at Sarah. Her eyes were wide. She'd felt it too. The game wasn't fun anymore. Something was wrong with this road, and we were driving deeper and deeper into it. Up ahead, my headlights illuminated an old stone bridge. This was it. The bridge from the legend. Part of me wanted to turn the car around and speed away. But the other part, the stupid, arrogant part of being a 19-year-old guy, wouldn't let me. I'd come this far. I couldn't look like a coward in front of Sarah. Okay, I said, my voice shakier than I wanted. This is the spot. I stopped the car right in the middle of the bridge. I took a deep breath, and then I killed the engine. Darkness and silence immediately swallowed us. It was so thick it was almost suffocating. I turned off the headlights, to 2. Now we were in total blackness. Jake, I don't like this, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. It'll be quick, I promised, not even believing it myself. I rolled my window down an inch. The cold air rushed in. I cleared my throat and I called out into the dark. Lucinda, nothing. Lucinda, I called, louder this time, still just silence. Liam had said you had to say it 3 times. My heart was pounding like a drum. Lucinda. The second the last word left my mouth, the silence deepened, grew heavier, and then we heard it. From beneath the bridge, a sound of crying. The quiet, heartbroken sobbing of a woman in absolute misery. Okay, that's enough, I said, my hand shaking as I turned the key. We're going. Click. I turned it again. Click, click. The engine wouldn't turn over. What's the loudest sound in the world? It's the click of a car engine that won't start when you in the middle of nowhere. In the dark, after you've just called out a dead woman's name. Start, you piece of junk, start. I growled at the car, frantically turning the key. Useless, we were trapped. The crying was getting closer. It wasn't under the bridge anymore, it was on the bridge. With us. Jake, look, Sarah whimpered, pointing at the windshield. At the far end of the bridge, in the gloom just beyond the reach of the faint moonlight, something was moving. It was white, ethereal. It wasn't walking. It was gliding, drifting toward us slowly, unstoppably. They say a man's instinct is to protect. But what do you do when the thing you supposed to protect your girlfriend from is a person? It doesn't have a body. You can't fight it. You can't even run. What do you do then? I just sat there, paralyzed, and watched as the white figure drew closer. It didn't come to my side. It glided to the passenger side, to Sarah's window. Sarah let out a choked scream and buried her face in my shoulder. I forced myself to look, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. It was right there, separated from us only by a pane of glass. A face, pale and swollen like it had been in water for a long time. Long dark hair was plastered to its sides, and the eyes. Dear God, the eyes. They were just too deep, black, empty sockets, but I could feel them looking, boring into our terror. Its mouth was open in a silent scream. It pressed that face against the glass. I heard a hideous, soft scraping sound. A cold fog spread out from the point of contact. Sarah was sobbing hysterically. I was still turning the key, uselessly, and the ghost was still there, staring at us with all the sorrow and rage of hell. And then, like a miracle, the engine roared to life. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I stomped on the gas as hard as I could. The car lurched forward, tires screaming, and we shot off that bridge like a bullet. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror. I just drove, as fast as I could. Off that road, back to the streetlights, back to the false safety of the civilized world. The ride home was silent, broken only by Sarah's muffled sobs. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry felt cheap and meaningless. I had done this. My arrogance, my stupidity. I had taken her there. How do you drive down a familiar road after that? How do you look at the town you grew up in the same way, knowing what's really hiding in its dark corners? The story is over for you, the listener. But for us, for me and Sarah, we have to live with the knowledge that Lucinda is still out there, on that bridge, waiting. That night, I didn't just see a ghost. I learned a lesson. That some stories aren't just stories. Some legends are warnings. And some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed again.
And so, our journey through the hidden corners of Iowa comes to an end. We began beside a campfire, in the innocence of youth, and we finished on a lonely bridge, confronting a sorrow that never fades. 5 stories. 5 fragments of a shattered mirror, each reflecting a different form of fear. We witnessed the raw, brutal evil of man at Gitchie, Manitou, a reminder that the most terrifying monsters sometimes walk on 2 legs. We felt the horror trapped within the walls of Edinburgh Manor, where the echoes of suffering created a living entity of its own. We faced a curse born from tragedy and forged in bronze, the Black Angel, a symbol of how dangerous grief can become. We listened to the whispers in the halls of Farrar School, a place where the past refuses to sleep and discipline extends even beyond the grave. And finally, we learned the power of a legend on Stony Hollow Road, that to speak a spirit's name is to give it power over you. Each of these stories is a dark thread, woven into a tapestry far more complex than the peaceful cornfields we imagine when we think of Iowa. They are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a deeper truth, that our world exists parallel to another, a world of memories, of pain, and of souls that have not found peace. The veil between these two worlds is so much thinner than we think. And now, these stories are no longer just theirs. They are yours too. Each story is a seed that has been planted in your mind. And in the quiet moments, in the darkness, it will sprout. The next time you drive down a deserted road at night, you will remember Jake and Lucinda. The next time you pass an old, abandoned building, you will think of Alex and the growl in the basement. These stories have changed you, just as they changed the people who live them. You are no longer a safe observer. You are a carrier of this knowledge, and that is a burden. Thank you for bravely joining Horror Stories Hub on this long and dark journey. We know that listening is not always easy, but the truth rarely is. Of the 5 adventures into darkness you just took, which experience has truly haunted you? Was it the fateful gunshot that shattered the night at Gitchie, Manitou? The inhuman growl in the cellar of Edinburgh Manor? The bone-chilling cold of the Black Angel? The single bouncing basketball at Farrar School? Or the vacant face of Lucinda pressed against the car window? Share your horror with us in the comments below. We read them all. And more importantly, where does our journey go next? Which state do you want us to pull back the veil on? What horrors are waiting in your own backyard? Let us know, and perhaps the next nightmare we explore will come from the place you call home. If this fear has touched you, leave a like to let us know we share the same dark curiosity. Press the subscribe button and the notification bell to never miss an appointment with the darkness. Until next time, always double-check what's behind you in the mirror, and always lock your doors carefully, because you never know if the next horror story will be your own.